You want to make sure you're in your tornado safe area. And of course, that's your basement if you have one. If not, lowest floor of your home, many walls between you and the wind as possible. Underneath a piece of furniture, mattress, sofa, blanket, put a helmet on, shoes, flashlight, charge your cell phone.
On December 10th, 2021, a tornado outbreak spawned 66 tornadoes across the central United States.
This is a particularly dangerous situation. Take cover now. This tornado has a history of producing significant damage.
One supercell thunderstorm spawned multiple strong tornadoes and created an interstate path of destruction across 4 states in 4 hours.
It's a long-track supercell, long-track tornado that is now into far southwestern Kentucky.
At around 8:49 p.m. Central Time, a tornado formed in Woodland Mills, Tennessee, near the border with western Kentucky. It would remain on the ground for 2 hours and 58 minutes, ripping a line of death and destruction stretching 165 miles through Kentucky.
Because this one is much more of a beast than what we've been dealing with lately.
If you take somebody that didn't know and you just drove them through just one of the communities, whether it was Dawson Springs, Mayfield here, just any of them, you know, don't even have to be the big towns, just these small towns, and you tell them that it was 500 or more people died, they'd believe it. Because it has wiped out this community.
We got someone under this debris.
81 people died in storm-related deaths in Kentucky alone. Over 500 were injured, but thousands of people survived along the path without a scratch.
We thought about that a lot since that happened, just how terrible things are, but how much worse they could have been. And that is an interesting question. You know, how did so many people go with their gut or listen to that person or pay attention or feel the vibe that something wasn't right and reacted correctly?
You are in a life-threatening situation. Flying debris may be deadly to those caught without shelter. Mobile homes will be destroyed. Considerable damage to homes, businesses, and vehicles is likely, and complete destruction is possible.
In a way, it was like a hurricane. Not just the widespread damage as far as the eye can see, but the fact that the National Weather Service and meteorologists had been warning of the potential of this exact disaster for days.
Number one, you'd had to been blind not to see the indicators from like days before.
Well, I mean, a few days beforehand, we knew that there was going to be a threat. Certainly didn't anticipate, you know, an historical day like what we saw.
But if you weren't paying attention, December 10th started like a lie. 70s and sunny, 2 weeks before Christmas in Kentucky.
No, they would just think, oh, this is such a beautiful day in December. That's what most people think.
Physical and computer observations were making retired National Weather Service meteorologist and Mayfield resident Deanna Lindstrom sick.
Oh, sick stomach. You just know something's going to happen. You just know it. And don't know where, you know, until it officially sets up where you see the whites of its eyes. But bad feeling all around for that 2-day period.
Things first started going bad to the west in Missouri and Arkansas.
Started seeing these observations coming back around to the south, and I got really worried at that point. That's when I left the house to go chase that day.
Storm chaser Brandon Clement tracked a tornado spawned by the storm as it crossed I-55 in northeast Arkansas.
I knew it was coming towards me, and I was in really good position. So I was pulled over on the side of the road on I-55 and just set my dash camera towards the tornado, and then started seeing power flashes. And then, you know, there's a lot of lightning. I'm expecting to see it with the lightning. The lightning was all out front, so it really didn't illuminate it. And then as it got about 8 to 10 miles from the interstate, some lightning bolts pop behind it, and you can see this monster. It is just a monster of the night is all you can really say about it. It was a huge tornado, looked like a big whiskey barrel. Started seeing debris flown during the lightning. Every time the lightning was striking, you can see debris. You can see the power flashes going.
Surely it's going to weaken before it gets here. So we're doing these other warnings, and we were wall-to-wall coverage, which was what we do in tornado warning situations. So when we catch a little break, we'd say, hey, by the way, there's a big storm moving into West Tennessee. It's been pretty violent. It's kind of moving in our direction. Could be a factor, not sure.
Now, just giving you a heads up here on this storm, because it has been causing all kinds of problems southwest of our area.
Meanwhile, in Mayfield, Kentucky, a town of 10,000 in the western part of the state near Tennessee and Missouri, it was opening night of A Christmas Carol.
You know, coming out of COVID, we needed Christmas Carol. You have a lot of people who have just put so much sweat equity into the show that we saw where we could safely put a show on Friday night.
Opening night is always the best night, always the best night, and little did we know that opening night would be the only night.
The audience that night didn't realize the real show going on behind the curtain.
I was here. I had just retired at the end of December of last year. I worked for the National Weather Service for 35 years. So it was kind of what I took it as my calling, that when the storms were coming in and we knew that it was going to be a bad day, that what I did after we got the people in we chose to do the show based on where the storms were sitting. We were prepared to basically just shut the show down in the middle if we had to.
You could just see her mentality changed. And that's when I'm very thankful they let us finish the show, to be honest.
Normally we have this big long line of congratulatory handshaking and back smacking and flower giving and things like that. And just, as soon as the play was over, it was announced, vamoose, we need to leave because, there's a system coming and we want to make sure everybody is safe.
They didn't even take the time to clean out the popcorn machine because there was an empty feeling something bad was coming. And it did, about 30 minutes after the last person left the theater in downtown Mayfield.
Well, my wife and I decided we wanted to cover the storms. We, watching the news and reading about it, we saw that it was, had a good chance of being pretty intense. So we decided to make the trip down from Lexington.
For you guys watching, we're outside of Mayfield, Kentucky.
And then conditions started getting worse. Lots of heavy lightning. Rain was just tremendous. And then I told her, I said, let's try to get to Mayfield, Kentucky, and then we'll kind of shelter there and let things pass and see what happens. But we didn't make it.
And we were hunkered down.
We might just blow away in the van. I'm not so sure we're hunkered down. We might blow away in the van.
I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first time doing anything like this. We are not storm chasers. We need to pull over.
I don't know, but just pull over.
We were going down a road that was not familiar to us anyways, and all I could think of is we're gonna run into a funnel cloud. We're gonna drive right into it. So I said, I think we need to at least pull over and find us a place to just stop for just a few minutes.
According to the National Weather Service, the average lead warning time ahead of a tornado is 9 minutes. The Paducah, Kentucky office issued direct warnings to Mayfield 30 minutes before it reached the city limits.
I always felt a little bit safe because, the kids say, is a tornado really coming? And, at different times. And I'm like, oh, this house has been here 80 years. The whole town has been there, almost 200 years. I mean, we're probably going to be safe. You just have that sense of safety because it's just never happened.
That day, we had watched it come all the way from Arkansas, all the way this way. Yeah, I knew that it was a very good chance it was going to hit Mayfield 3 hours beforehand, But I knew for sure it was going to hit it within 30 minutes. I had planned on leaving, getting in my truck and driving out of the path of the tornado.
It's now moving through Mayfield.
I could see where it was coming on the radar. We were barely going to get it here, in this neighborhood if we got hit at all. And drove probably a mile, maybe a little more than a mile, and stopped right there and watched the tornado, basically. Every time it lightninged, I could see a monstrous funnel cloud. I mean, I was so close I could see stuff floating around, you know what I mean? It was scary.
Near Rodney Burgess's house on the outskirts of Mayfield, around 110 workers were inside the Mayfield Consumer Products Factory, manufacturing scented candles.
And at 9 o'clock, 9:15 around, the alarm sound. And we were moved to the sheltering area. And I asked one of the supervisors, and I said, can I go home? Because we were there like 2 or 3 minutes. And I said, can I go home? No, you cannot go home because the tornado alarm is on. And I said, okay. If everything goes good, we go back to work. And I said, perfect.
Jesse, who works in the back in the warehouse, and he's a trucker, and I texted him and I said, they got us in the warehouse. He was like, yeah, I'm out here in the van, or I'm out here, and he was outside.
And we looking up at the sky, and it's lightening up, and then all of a sudden it just got still, quiet, no nothing. I literally rolled the window down. His name Tommy. I'm saying, dang, Tommy, you don't hear nothing. I mean, you can't even hear the animals.
And then I felt this wind, the lights began to flicker, and I texted him and I said, the lights just flickered. And then he texted me, he said, the lights went out. And then at 9:27, I texted him, I said, power went out. And that was our last text. And then I remember we just kind of did a sway.
Then it's moving left, right.
And then boom.
Boom.
The whole building just collapsed on us.
The building took a direct hit from the EF4 tornado, and Jesse Fitz was in a van parked outside as the tornado picked it up and violently twisted it around.
I felt the rear end going around to the, like, I couldn't believe it, I was saying. So ain't no sense of me holding this wheel. So I just dove to the floorboard. And when I dove to the floorboard, it just took it. And it was, the roof came in, all the windows bust out the van. And at one point while I was up under there, my feet was dangling. So I was like, how is my feet dangling inside this van? I'm thinking that the building falling down on me.
In reality, the van Fitz was clinging inside of ended up on top of the rubble of the candle factory.
I looked out the window, I couldn't believe it. The whole van was on top of, the whole rumble on top of the candle factory. So I was, Dad, Tommy, I'm on top of the candle factory. I couldn't get out because it was like dead smack on top of all these debris, and like I saw one railing. If I step anywhere, you can't see. It looked like you could just fall through.
There are reports of people trapped at a candle factory in Mayfield, and they're
I trying to find a flashlight, but actually I make a live on Facebook, and I see a lot of people coming. What's going on? What's going on? So I knew somehow they would let my family know what's going on. So that's what happened. Oh, everybody got connected. Everybody started calling me, and I was trapped.
I know I'm gonna be okay.
They sought comfort on social media.
I didn't want my kids to see it.
I said, I gotta get on Facebook because I gotta get people to get here. So I went on Facebook Live. I did a live telling people where we were, that we were trapped. I was in the candle building. And I stayed on that live for a little while. I don't know how long, but I just needed I needed more people to know.
I think they're trying to get to us, but I'm really scared that I'll be one of the last people that they get to.
When I went live, it was dark and they couldn't see, but they could hear the screams around.
Y'all watching. Y'all, Andrea, baby, calm down. Calm down, calm down, calm down, calm down. We gonna be okay, Andrea. I promise we is gonna be fine, baby. We is gonna be fine.
And it, you know, we live in a time where people want to experience, like they want to feel what you feel, you know, when that type of stuff. So they were able to kind of get a little glimpse of what we were going through.
Talking to the thousands who had tuned in also helped Kiana forget for moments the situation she was in.
So I just needed to stay talking so that I wouldn't think about my leg that was pinned down. I needed to be able to keep my coworkers calm. Like, it was just so many things that we're trying to do.
It was a nightmare. Being there trying with people, then I passed out 2 times. The second time that I passed out, I actually stopped responding, not answering, breathing.
She wasn't moving. Andrea was just, and the entire time Andrea was screaming, "Hi," you know, speaking in Spanish. And I'm like, and then she stopped breathing. She wasn't moving. I said, Andrea. I said, baby, no, Andrea. And I started shaking her.
And I heard that very, very, very far. And I tell God, this is the end of the road. I think I will die right here.
After over 3 hours of being trapped in the rubble, rescuers were able to reach their small corner of the factory. For Parsons Perez, it was her first moments of freedom as a 40-year-old. Her birthday was at midnight.
Even though I said it and I was happy about it, it seemed so insignificant in comparison to everything that was going on. You know, I did have the best gift ever, which is the gift of life.
I get off the interstate, my first exit was right there by the candle factory. Of course, it's nighttime, you can't really see what's going on, but I've been through enough of these to see just off the side of the road what the trees look like. And when I saw the trees, you know, debarked and twisted and torn and just completely sheared off at low levels, it's just like, this was a violent tornado. I knew right then it was really bad.
They're saying that Main Street there in Mayfield took a very direct hit.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I had never seen anything like that in real time. And so that got my attention, that this is really bad.
Bessie Burgess was at work watching the debris ball go right over the exact spot where her home and husband were.
When I looked good at the TV, I was just like, my mouth dropped open and I was like a stupid person, was pointing like, and the nurse aide I was with said, "What are you doing?" I said, "That debris ball is right over my house."
Every time that it would lighten, it was very, very loud, even a mile away where I was at. I could see it coming this way. It was moving very, very fast. I didn't know if it was further back or if it was hitting our houses, but I knew it was right here, very close. I just watched it. I mean, there wasn't really nothing else I could do, you know. I watched it hit this neighborhood, and then I watched it go through Mayfield, flew back over here. I mean, it didn't take me a minute or 2 minutes, you know what I mean? And that's when I pulled that curb right up there. It was jet black. There was, you know, all the power was off and it was still raining, but not like it was before. I stopped right there on that corner and I could see my house was completely gone. Everything was flat, trees everywhere.
When you heard the storm, it was like a monster. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before. And I mean, it was scary. It was a monster in the dark that was coming to hurt you.
I was sitting in a building that had a 4-inch concrete wall, but the sound when it went, I mean, we knew it was north of us where we were, and the sound was just the most eerie sound.
When we started pulling in, obviously there was no power. We're driving in on a 4-lane highway, and the only vehicles that are meeting us have flashing lights. But nobody really stopped us. What that told me is that they don't even have time. They don't even have time to stop people coming in to take a look. Usually, scenes locked up and they say you can't come down this road. There really wasn't any of that. It was all hands on deck, obviously, from anybody.
The powerful tornado had passed through Mayfield, and it wasn't weakening.
And so you kind of have to start doing a 180 in your mind, like, okay, this is getting closer. It's not weakening, but it's in the moderate risk. So maybe by the time it gets here, it's going to fall apart. And obviously it didn't. So it was that fine line between, all right, this needs to be hyped. But you didn't know for sure once it got here how bad it really was.
But there's Bremen, and it looks like it's going to come in, if anything, just to the north and west of Bremen.
The small town of Bremen, Kentucky, is around 100 miles from Mayfield, but many of its residents had been paying close attention to the weather as there had been several tornado warnings throughout the evening.
And there was like 4 different tornadoes that they had called for, and one of those actually hit Central City.
From down in Central City here, Wayne, we'd sent a crew, like we told you, down there, and you can see lots of police cars, emergency vehicles there.
Wayne Hart from WH Channel 25 News in Evansville told us it's getting ready to hit Bremen head on.
I listened to Wayne Hart on radio, the TV, and the way he talked when it hit Mayfield, we was on, well, we done left then, but when it hit Mayfield, we heard that they said it's destroyed. I said, the way he talked, that's probably the worst he's ever seen.
I just remember, of course, Wayne Hart was talking about the larger one. He said there's one coming up. He said, I really think this is going to be, pretty massive. I remember him saying it's going to be taking this path and that it hits this place at this time and this place at this time. And and I could tell just by the radar image that this one was so much bigger than the others that had come through.
We really ramped up the intensity and the tone of our coverage as it was approaching Dawson Springs, and then just stuck with it, you know, every mile as it went through Hopkins into Muhlenberg County, including the Bremen area here.
But many stayed in their homes, even as the tornado was tearing towards Bremen.
We have a basement here in our home, so we don't really ever think much about storms, but we were aware of what could be coming. When we got reports out of Mayfield and then out of Dawson Springs, we knew it just wasn't a warning, it was a real thing. We were under a mattress on our hands and knees in the middle of the basement floor. The kids and I and a few other family members, and I'll never forget it.
All I heard was it's just indescribable. I looked up and I watched my ceiling and my roof just go. And all I seen was my roof. And then just the night sky. And then all of a sudden our ceiling come down just as hard and it knocked me to my knees. And then all you was the blown insulation that was in the top of my house and the roof, you know. That's all it was just, it was blowing around so hard. It was in your eyes, your mouth, your ears. You couldn't even breathe.
We went in the bedroom, got a mattress off the bed, got some comforters, and me and my wife, my stepdaughter, 7 months pregnant, and my stepson got behind the mattress against the wall with 3 little dogs and 1 big dog. And pretty much I looked out the back window of the house and I seen it and told him it was on the ground. I just started praying the hardest I ever prayed in my life. And I could hear the roof starting ripping off the house, windows blowing out. And I think I don't know how long, it seemed like it lasted for an hour, but I know it didn't last that long. But I got trapped underneath the furnace. My wife had a water heater fall on her.
I guess one of the biggest moments, though, is when we came out of the basement and looked up, and it was raining on our heads, and standing in my living room, you could see lightning flash across the sky, standing where, we'd just been setting moments earlier. And that was a really surreal moment. I remember saying, y'all, our house is gone. And they said, yeah, it's gone.
Savannah, I let her go to her room. And there was that instant of, why? Why did I do that? And I thought, what if she's hurt? What if it sucked her up? And I thought, it's my fault because I let her go to that room. And I went straight over there and I had to shove that door open. And all I seen was just ceiling. And I looked over and I seen her pillows and blankets, and her bed had been just sucked to the middle of the room. And I was screaming and screaming, Savannah. And it's just unimaginable, the feeling I had. Because I've had her since she was 1.5 years old. And I screamed. And then all of a sudden, I looked over and she just popped up. That was the best feeling I ever had in my life. She's just a little skinny thing, And I grabbed her and I was surprised I didn't crush her.
Around 187 people live in the small town of Bremen. 14 of them took shelter here, a 12 by 12 foot shelter built by Estel Ferris after the family that lived here had a tornado destroy their home back in 1988.
I had a large mobile home here and it blew it away while we were here. We got away, before it blew it away. So when I built my home, I decided to build a real strong storm shelter at the end of my house. So it happened again, which I was hoping it never happened again, but it did.
We always tell the neighbors, come on over, even if we're not home, come on over and get in the shelter, because she's handicapped and in a wheelchair.
Which is the exact reason Teresa Ferris nearly didn't go to the shelter that night. But a voice on the TV convinced her 10-year-old granddaughter that they had to.
She said, I'm going to sit up here and write it out. I was like, it's not going to be easy.
Oh my God.
My left leg's missing, and we had done went over there once
Right.
earlier that night,
And
but nothing to her. But I done got wet and I was cold, and I thought, no, I'm gonna just stay here. And Ed was like, no, you better come on. Wayne says it's coming, and it's coming. So she come back over and just kept begging me.
So you actually talked some people into going to the shelter. Wow.
The 10-year-old convincing all 12 members of her family to go back.
So we seen it. We got out, stood beside the garage, man, my boy, oldest boy did, and we seen it coming. You could see it like the whole sky just lit up, debris going up there. I said, let's go. We run in, got inside, shut the door, then you could hear the winds, like about 10 trains come through the top of that thing.
I was just scared I was going to lose my whole family. I kept telling Nestor, it's going to come in on us. He said, no, it ain't. We're fine here.
And it just started like growling. The ground started shaking. My Uncle Glenn came running inside. He was like, it's here, it's here. I was like, well, shut the door. I mean, it's gonna get bad. So he shuts the door, and about a second in, it started. I had my ears plugged for a little bit. I felt like the walls were just gonna drop down on us. And like my mom was telling me, she was like, well, I don't feel like this is gonna hold up. And everybody in there was screaming, trying to block out the noise. I was like, y'all gotta quit screaming, it's making it worse. It was scaring me more and more and more. And I was like, and then I thought it wasn't gonna hold up.
I just knew it was gonna take us all.
It's hard to describe it. I mean, it's this way it sounded, hitting it, but it was bad.
He told me that it was gonna hold up, and that's what I was happy about, because as soon as he said that, I believed it. I believed it. And once if I believe in him, I'm gonna believe in him, because
When we built it, I said, yeah, I know you're gonna spend a little more money. I said, you're not my neighbor. I said, but if we're gonna do it, and if I'm gonna stay in it, my kids, which then at the time, I ain't had no grandkids. You know, that's 18 years ago. I said, if we're gonna build it, it's gonna be, I want it stout. So it's got a ton of rebar in it. I mean, a ton of it.
You were listening to me on radio.
Yeah.
One of our partners out of Owensboro. So did you have the radio in here also?
No, I didn't have. We didn't have none in there.
Okay.
All we had was that radio was out of Paducah, and it went down.
18 years ago, you built this, and it saves 14 lives.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably ain't really dawned on me a lot, but I don't want nobody pat me on the back and everything. I'm glad God was good to us. We lived through it, so.
He had confidence. Nobody might not pat him on the back, but I would.
A well-built shelter and a trusted voice with over 2 decades of experience on the local airwaves, the family believes helped get them through the storm.
I feel like he saved our life that night. I was listening to him. I just felt like it was time to go.
And what's your name?
Bristol.
Bristol. Well, give me a hug, Bristol. You did such a great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
And your family appreciates it.
Yeah, very much.
Gosh.
That's what I'm just happy about, that we're all safe. But thank you so much.
It doesn't really, until you hear stories like this, you know, it's one thing to do it on TV and look at it on radar, but to hear it firsthand from...
The tornado's twisted path is the 9th longest in recorded history. Towns like Bremen suffered human losses as large as 5% of their entire population. Towns like Dawson Springs were basically wiped from the map.
It's unbelievable. You drive an hour and a half to go shoot damage from the same tornado. But I drove to Dawson Springs, and when I pulled into Dawson Springs, it was just destruction. It was just destruction. There's nothing left.
A town of just 2,500, the destruction in Dawson Springs had the biggest impact on the state's most powerful leader. This was where Governor Andy Beshear would spend holidays with his grandparents growing up.
1 block from my grandparents' house, there's no house standing. There's no house standing, and we don't know where all those people are.
15 residents in the governor's father's hometown were killed. 2 relatives were also killed in the next county over. In the days following the tornado, the pain was personal in the politician's voice.
It's hard to understand how something like this, or why something like this happens. It is just awful. And the people who lost everything, but are still here with us, it's hard to think of them as lucky, but this is really hard. But we're gonna make it.
Mayfield was the largest city hit.
I saw this sign. It just said historic downtown Mayfield. Really well painted sign on the side of a brick building. And I tried to use my drone to tell a story. And I put it on the sign and just right here on the sign, let it sit there. It was a really hard shot because it was still windy. It was moving the drone around. So I had to just like get just a few seconds of still shot on it. Held it there for a second. And then when I came up, turned it back towards the whole downtown, which has just been completely demolished. And it's like, visit historic downtown Mayfield, and then you see historic downtown Mayfield. It just looked like a bomb went off. When I posted that to Twitter, it just instantly went super viral.
Everybody's kind of said that morning when the sun came up and you could actually see, you know, that it wasn't just the big buildings that you'd seen the pictures of, that there were houses for miles behind them, just city blocks squished. The biggest gut punch for me, you know, buildings are buildings and stuff is stuff, but when I saw Mayfield First United Methodist, that's where my family goes, that's where I was married, you know, so many life events have happened there. You know, buildings are buildings, but buildings can be more than buildings.
When we saw the courthouse itself for the first time, that was that nightmare scenario that I had hoped that I would never see. You know, the courthouse is a symbol of our town, and you know, it's what the pictures are of our town. When people, here's Mayfield, and there's a picture of the courthouse, you know, and that's what hurts. It's we know that it's a building and that it can be built back and so forth, but it does become a part of who you are. It represents who you are as a community.
The community theater building somehow is still standing, surrounded by rubble, alone in the heart of the tornado's path.
But it was full force the next morning, you know, knowing that if we had not gotten people out, it was going to be a tragedy. It's not so much that we would have been in this building at the time it hit, but it was the matter of getting people home so that they would be safe in their homes.
Across the state, there are stories of how a wrong turn turned out to be the right one.
Our GPS actually took us kind of a weird way that it shouldn't have, which delayed our time. And I go back and I look at a whole lot of things, you know, from the route that we took, from the things that were in front of us, and I just don't think it was meant for us to be in Mayfield at that time.
Survival stories.
Overnight, my whole world was different.
While lives were changed in minutes.
Honestly, I expected to be some tornado damage, you know, because I saw the tornado and it was massive, but I honestly didn't expect this. I mean, I expected there to be houses down, but I didn't expect it to be this bad, completely gone, you know, completely out of sight, you know. Cars, I mean, my neighbor's car was thrown over 1,000 feet. You know, it's back there in the woods. That black van right there was sitting on top of where my house was, you know. It's unbelievable.
But somehow, many still have a lifetime left to live together.
I was sad, but I was so glad he was still here because he's the love of my life. He showed me what well it was. He built me the house of my dreams. He's almost done with it when the tornado hit.
We had just spent 2 years almost building it and spending all our life savings on it, you know what I mean?
He worked so hard on that house for me. And he asked me every step of the way, what do you want? You can have whatever you want, you know? And he built me it was like a little house on the prairie house. It had board and batten siding, cedar posts on the front porch, beautiful. And I thought I was pretty lucky, pretty rich there. But it goes to show you, nothing is for forever for sure, you know.
But if you had only seen this damage and hadn't heard the stories, how many would you have thought survived? How close was it?
If that had been the first tornado warning of the night, I don't think people would have been watching and paying attention, because it was after 10 o'clock on a Friday evening in December, going into a weekend, and people may not have even realized what was happening.
The powerful EF4 tornado had peak winds of 190 miles per hour, lofting debris at over 30,000 feet. Many items were found hundreds of miles away.
It means the world to me. Part of my life here. You don't realize how important pictures are until they're gone. And you can't get them back, you know.
Yep, there it is.
My son's senior picture was found in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a 3.5-hour drive from here. Mint condition. Looked like somebody just printed off camera.
We were lucky because we come out unscathed, you know. I mean, the good Lord, he was resting over us. He protected us.
I guess grace of God. One wall left standing in the house. That's all was left standing. One 6 foot wide wall, about 8 foot tall. With nothing left all around us. All walls were down except that one wall. And it's something I'll never forget. My wife hasn't been back to this house since it's happened.
I mean, it's just, I really don't know how to explain it. You know, it's like one minute you have everything and then the next minute it's gone, and then you're just trying to start over, rebuild.
And where do you start?
Some families have already sold their land.
It didn't really hit hard till I started loading my house up in the dump truck and hauling it off. As soon as I get it cleaned up, a lot's going up for sale. Like, too many memories here. A lot of good memories here, but that one bad memory.
Others plan on undertaking the long process of rebuilding.
We've talked about it, we've thought about it, and I could lose a house 1,000 more times, and as long as he's here, it'll be okay. I would be in a totally different place if he wasn't here. I do not want him to have to spend the next 2 years build me another one. I said he can and he will. I said, but he deserves better than that.
Well, we've had I guess a pretty good bit of progress. We have the house tore down. It's just unreal. I mean, because I walked up here the other day and was just looking, and I was just like, wow. It's like it just wasn't even here.
Tens of millions of dollars from the federal and state governments are targeting tornado victims. Insured losses are expected to rise to $5 billion. But much of the immediate assistance came through charities and volunteers.
The thing that has touched me the most probably is the way everybody's come together. From all the surrounding towns, everywhere, you see signs up to say Mayfield strong, Kentucky strong, and you hear so many bad stories about the stuff that goes on in the world, and you're like, oh my God, this world is going to hell. But then when things like this happen and you see the kindness and the concern of others and things like that, and you say, you know what, the world ain't such a bad place after all.
I never thought with so many ways that people are divided in this world, did I ever think that what's happened in Mayfield and Dawson Springs and Cayce and all these other towns that have been hit by this tornado. I will tell you, I've seen people come together, and it makes you realize that humanity still may be a good thing, you know, because people have come together and tried to help people that are in need.
But you feel so helpless because you want to help somebody. And here you are, you can't even help yourself. So all I do is I pray for them. Because, you know, the good Lord will see us through, because this is one of the best communities in the world. Everybody wants to talk about Kentucky, you know, they're just barefoot hillbillies. Well, they can talk about us all they want, but these barefoot hillbillies take care of each other.
Sometimes you never know exactly what strikes the right chord.
So Saturday, several of my family members were here, and they were just trying to help me box up what we could salvage. And so I sat down, I saw this piano, and I thought, I don't know what kind of shape it's in, but I want to play it at least once more before we leave this place, you know. It's condemned. Many of the keys were sticking and, you know, is already in bad shape. And my sister came down the hall. Last I had seen her, she's packing up clothes for me in my bedroom. I didn't know she was there, just a private moment. There's a line in the chorus that says, kings and kingdoms will all pass away. But there's something about the name of Christ. And I had one of those rare moments where the lyric spoke louder to me than the music did. And it was so pertinent, so relevant to what we were dealing with. Our little 13-acre kingdom was destroyed, you know.
Jordan was invited to play at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee, a performance that raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for tornado relief.
Most of us never survive a tornado. We never experience that. But we all deal with storms. And I think even the folks that weren't affected by the weather that night understood that there are difficulties of life, the likes of which we can't get through on our own. And that's where faith is important to us. Not much to it, boys.
Science can explain why a tornado like this can happen and even predict when one might form. But to understand how so many were able to survive what appeared to be unsurvivable, you have to ask them the question and hear the survival stories that will be shared for generations, long after the rubble has been cleared and a new normal returns to Western Kentucky.